Welcome to Mythical Phylogeny Adventures. I'm your guide, Jason. Today, I want to look into how you can make a foe experience something that isn't there. We'll look at the different sensory organs and how to mess them up. The idea of creating confusion on the battlefield is as old as you can get. Probably the best use of it is the genjutsu from Naruto. Sadly, it fell off fairly quickly in the series. The goal of illusion magic is to make a foe think one thing is happening when it is another. Now, the best way to make it work is to target one of the 5 senses to get hold of your foe. The best option is to involve multiple senses to create a fuller deception. Now, it may be possible to use one sense to influence the others. Illusion magic creates what are basically hallucinations, which can be caused by a disruption in the sensory organs. Okay, technically, there is a difference between illusions, which are misperceived sensory input, while hallucinations are just imagined sensory input. Small difference, but can be useful in extreme cases. In a normal person, these can be caused by chemical imbalances, often from using drugs, untreated medical conditions, or sleep deprivation. Let's start with what is probably the most commonly used sense: sight. The anatomy of the eye is fairly simple. The white part of the eye is called the sclera. The lens is a clear structure which helps focus light onto the back of the eye. The colored iris is used to control the amount of light entering the black pupil. The back of the eye is the retina, where light is focused. The most detailed site is the macula at the center. There are 2 types of light sensing structures: rods for movement and cones for colors. There is a blind spot located at the junction of the optic nerve, and this takes it to the occipital lobe of the brain, where it is interpreted. Now, visual illusions are often called mirages. These come from seeing light get refracted by layers in the air. Now, creating a spell to achieve this would mean manipulating the evaporated water and temperature in the air to distort how things look. This would probably work the best against multiple opponents. Yet, there are other ways. We have all thought we saw movement in the corner of our eye. Well, the rods and cones are not evenly distributed. The cones are more central and offer a better detailed vision, and rods to the side. This could aid in targeting spells to create false movement, swinging a sword when it is in fact still. But could a spell like that work? One option would be something that stimulates the rods and cones with light. So a flashy spell, a burst of light. Sure, they may notice that, but a more subtle flash of light maybe? Something flickering off a piece of jewelry. There is a reason I started with the rods. They are the older and more primitive system, though targeting the cones would work as well, but the spell may need to shift colors to achieve it. And that brings up color psychology. Yes, certain colors can influence emotions. Red can promote more spontaneous actions, while blue can promote thought and calmness. This could be used to influence a fight. Get your foe to be more reckless or more cautious when time is on the line. Your spell would need to stimulate the cells you want. It will likely take practice to create the illusion you want though. Generally, I feel there would be 2 options. A subtle illusion, which is harder to detect, like making you appear without your weapon. Or the larger, more obvious, such as something huge appearing. The larger would probably be easier, more room for error. But you only need a few moments to distract your foe. I mean, if a dragon suddenly showed up before you, that would make you hesitate for a couple of seconds. Or you could just disable sight altogether, and that is all you need. Overall, I feel visual illusions should be fairly easy to pull off. If done right, you could make a cliff appear as flat ground, or get a foe to ignore your weapon. But these would be fairly useless if your foe could just shut their eyes and still fight. Okay, very few could pull that off, but still, a better option would be creating a cloud of fog or darkness to obscure the light. While you can close your eyes, you can't close your ears. It has 3 sections: the outer, middle, and inner ear. Sound is focused by the outer ear to the eardrum, which will then transmit the sound to the cochlea. Inside, there are a series of hairs which are stimulated by a certain sound and creates nerve signals to the auditory nerve, then to the auditory cortex in the temporal lobe. But there is another part of the ear, semicircular canals. Now, you have probably heard that there are 5 senses: sight, sound, touch, smell, and taste. But we do have 2 more, proprioception and kinesthetic sense. Proprioception is knowing how your body is positioned, and kinesthesia is knowing how your body is moving. And both of these tie to the semicircular canals and the sense of touch. A sensory illusion would operate by creating waves within the air. If you want to create a particular sound, you would need to match a vibration. Now, the size of our head isn't completely random. It places the ears at a certain distance from each other to influence what sounds we can hear. And by being apart, you can use the time lag between the ears to approximate the sound's location. And if you can control this detail with your spell, you can make your foe think a sound is coming from one place when you are elsewhere. That can get them to turn and open up to an attack. The real potential of sound-based illusions is the semicircular canals. If your spell can stimulate them, it would cause them to lose balance. I'm sure we have all done it while kids, spun around until we are nice and dizzy, and then try and walk, stumbling and tripping forward before falling down. Good fun. Now try fighting like that. An illusion spell targeting sound could pull this off since both are tied to the auditory nerve. Due to it being sound-based, it would work on large groups of foes easily. This is one of the most powerful in my opinion. Perfect for disabling your foe, but could be countered by loud noises such as explosions or blaring music, which could upset the spell's vibrations. Now for the most powerful, sense of smell. Inside the nose are dozens of small receptors which are designed to pick up certain molecules, and when doing so, produce a nerve signal to the olfactory bulb of the brain. But that part of the brain is directly connected to the limbic system, which includes the hippocampus and amygdala. Those help regulate memories. All other senses go elsewhere before reaching the limbic system, which regulates their impacts. In fact, the sense of smell is so powerful that it can override the sense of taste. A little test you can do is blindfold a partner, hold up an apple to their nose, while putting a pear in their mouth. They will think they are eating the apple. Now, strong smells can easily create nausea, which can stun or distract foes. But a sweet smell can be used to lull them into relaxing. If you can get them to link to other senses, this would be the hardest to escape. To trigger it, you would need either an aromatic spell or magic channeled through a perfume. This would create a slow uptake for the scent to disperse and could reach a large group at once. If not, your spell would need to directly stimulate the olfactory bulb. A crude approach would be to overstimulate it until your foe vomits, and then you strike. On the opposite end is the sense of taste. This is done through the tongue. Now you have 5 receptors: sweet, salty, bitter, sour, and umami. The only ones which could be a real impact would be bitter and sour, since those are usually warning flavors of poison. But some humans like them. This could cause nausea and wanting to vomit. Now you have probably seen images which show different areas having different taste receptors, and that isn't accurate. They are more evenly spread out. Taste receptors are similar to smell receptors, using receptors for different kinds of molecules, which can then send signals back to the brain in the frontal lobe. This is the hardest to pull off. You need to touch their tongue with either a potion or a spell. But at that point, you could just use a spell for touch illusions easier. Sure, you could lace it into food, but at that point, smell would be more effective. Yeah, this one is pretty weak. It would only really be targetable on one person at a time. The sense of touch isn't just one type of receptor, but several. You have heavy pressure, light pressure, hot, cold, and pain. And these come in several different receptors each. These receptors operate on compression and stretch to trigger stimuli to the nerves. The hot and cold ones are open-end nerves. Now the fun thing is, touch receptors is your whole body. And it isn't just pressure, but temperature that you feel. so an illusion spell can target skin fairly easy. Now, we've all had the feeling of something crawling on you or walking through a spiderweb. It can be irritating and put you off. And a simple illusion through touch can do that. Make you feel like you are covered in spiders. Yeah, that is nightmare fuel. Now, a quick look down could show that it is false. Unless, like I mentioned before, you can use one sense to link it to others. Still, if only the sense of touch, that could create incredible issues. If you are fighting for your life and feel something on your back, like a sword blade, you will react. Panic even. But if you take away the feeling of touch, you get numbness. And have you tried walking on a numb leg? Yeah, you'll fall down. But there's one thing I haven't touched on. Just pain. Nerve pain is amongst the worst pain imaginable. Just talk to anybody who has ever had shingles. It hurts. Burning electrical pain. Sudden pain can cause you to spasm or even be crippled. There is a reason that the Harry Potter universe has the Cruciatus curse. It can put a foe down quickly and then leave them open to a counterattack. If I had to rank them on their potential, I would say that smell is the most powerful, followed by sound and touch, then sight, and lastly taste. The only reason that sound goes above touch is that it has more uses and the advantage of range. Now, a tactile spell might be able to cause paralysis, or perceived paralysis at least. Remember, part of your proprioception and kinesthesia comes from touch. And if you think you aren't moving, it could throw you off, or vice versa. A great example of this is when you feel like you are falling as you are trying to fall asleep. Now, how can we trigger the illusions to affect multiple senses at once? And this is where dreams come in. How many people here are lucid dreamers? Those who can control their dreams. Maybe a few. Well, dreams usually have sight and sound, but lacking on a few others. Namely, taste and smell. The last one is what I use for lucid dreams. And could an illusion exist that makes you feel fatigued and sleepy? Well, fatigue is a mental sense and lacks an external sensory organ. So, you would need to create it by linking it to other senses. Namely, sight and touch. So, our goal would be to get the illusion spell to induce a dreamlike state. What we want is to replicate the brainwaves found during REM sleep, which is difficult for full dreaming. But a partial daydream state? That might be achievable. And again, it probably won't need to last long. Just enough to slay or catch your foe. A couple of seconds of crowd control can quickly swing a fight. But that is an issue. Would your time and energy not be better spent just launching an attack? Well, yes and no. You want to win a fight, and if you can disable your foe where they can't fight back, that is the best. Or just take them out in one attack. It would come down to the situation. But you could use it for stealth or capturing operations, avoiding detection. For that, I like the Mirage sight, smell, and sound options because it offers the largest number of people you can target. Of course, you could probably wrangle a way for the others to work if you really wanted. So how to link the senses? Well, the answer is back in the nose discussion. Remember when I mentioned the limbic system? That is what you want to target with your spell. And from there, have it radiate out and target the other senses. Overall, I feel illusion magic is very underused in most series. It is the perfect tool for spies and saboteurs. Great for those who wish to avoid combat. Just imagine a healer who is invisible, hidden behind illusions. That is going to make it hard to take them out. There are plenty of ways to use illusion spells, which aren't explored. Thank you for watching, adventurers, and please return next time for the plant monsters. Until then, I'll see you on the roads.